Dana, let me know if I get this straight. The left is defending a dictator who stole an election.
But only now, because during Trump's first term, they went after him for not removing Maduro.
Right.
Okay, and they're on video saying all of this, so
Right.
it's not hard to go back and look all of those things up. Yesterday, the House Democrats had an emergency meeting to talk about their messaging because they're a hot mess. They are twisted all in knots about what are they going to say, and they think that their base wants them to say, like if President Trump said, we're going to cure cancer, they would say, leave cancer alone. Like,
Right.
but if you just take a step back, it's no wonder that Democrats who are in swing states or in tough districts, they realize that the initial gut reaction to go against anything is going to make their lives harder in trying to win back 2026. But there was an alternative. For example, let's say you're really worried about Venezuelan migrants that have come to America, and you're upset that President Trump has removed that temporary protective status, right? And you say, okay, well, what is something that we could do where we could get something from Trump that we want? Well, you wanted Maduro gone before. I guess they're deciding if they still want him gone. They also think, well, it shouldn't be about oil, but they were the ones complaining when the oil was taken from the American companies or the rights were taken from the American companies years ago. But why not? Why can't they ever just say, you know what we should do? Let's go to the president tomorrow and ask him if he's willing for anybody that's from Venezuela that doesn't have pending criminal charges against them or some sort of sexual charge against them or like some sort of conviction, could they stay while this gets worked out? Like, try to go to him and get something for your support for something that you wanted under Trump and Biden, his only term and Trump's first term. That doesn't make sense.
Do you know, Greg, what the Democrat policy is on Venezuela?
Yes, I do.
What is that?
They don't see a dictator, they see a father.
Oh.
A father with a son and 3 stepsons. And once again, Trump, the authoritarian, has split a family up.
Aw.
And you know what? Oh, you can mock me or you can laugh at me. I don't care. But what I see there is nothing short of a tragedy, especially around the holidays to split them up like that. You know, I love that the Dems were so upset that Trump sent Maryland dad to Central America and demanded him back for due process. Now they're mad that we bring this guy here from Venezuela for due process. Shouldn't they be happy? We could say, but we're just doing due process, you know. But you got to ask, you know, when you look, if you're a young leftist, you got to think for yourself and go, why are all these protests interchangeable? Why are the protesters interchangeable? Why do the signs all look alike and readily available? And I get it, you know, you're the opposition. Democrats are the opposition, but it's kind of funny when you start opposing yourself. The Dems will now defend anyone, including if it means contradicting their own beliefs from a few years ago. Chris Murphy was at Bozo, right? He was screaming to get Maduro out, and now he's like, oh, this is terrible. He said that the fact that Maduro was still in Venezuela was proof that Trump loves dictators. And now he's going, how dare he do this? So you got to I don't know. Also, and I'll shut up because I don't know if I'm making any sense. I'm just basically winging it. You got to love a party that violates federal law with sanctuary cities and then imploring their own law enforcement to defy or hinder ICE, then telling you that you're violating the law. That is like Ilhan Omar accusing you of incest.
That's been proven, right? I mean, no,
I don't know
what incest, the marrying. No,
I don't know what you're talking about.
Incest.
I'm just saying how ridiculous it is that anybody would accuse you of it. I just chose Ilhan Omar.
I got it. Out of the blue.
Yeah.
It seems like they wanted Trump in prison, but they want Maduro free. Is that the Democrat strategy?
Right. If any law is meant to be broken, if it in any way has to do with President Trump, here, however, what's more simple than a criminal indictment that, by the way, the original one issued under Biden's watch, and then hauling that person to court? For some reason, this absolutely implodes because it all occurred under President Trump's watch. The thing that I'm most surprised by in that montage was Stregonona there, the one who was in her 90s, who doesn't remember, who questions the authority by which we are arresting Maduro when she's the one that should remember. I'm now used to, unfortunately, all of these Democrat politicians and all of these sophomores that are protesting outside, forgetting everything about history that I would think someone of her age would remember exactly what happened, for example, with Noriega, and maybe back to the 1800s case I mentioned earlier, because maybe she's that old. But the whole point is that, again, to go back to that criminal jurisdiction, even if a defendant never set foot here, even if everything illegal happened off this shore, it is well settled, even if, per the Noriega comment, even if the capture violated international law and we improperly and unlawfully permeated that airspace and the sovereign land, even if the invasion itself was unlawful, which, by the way, all of those things are not here, even so, nothing strips the court of the jurisdiction over this criminal case. So people like Kamala, look, I know Kamala didn't pass the bar in the first time. I know she has an issue with knowing the law. So maybe I'm here to remind her that, yes, he squarely belongs in that court. And the court specifically talked about, even if this is someone who was abducted, and here, she's the one that says, correct, he is a dictator. Correct, he is not an actual sovereign president or state. So leader of a state. So she should know more than anyone that this was the most lawful thing about it. And unlike Noriega, this was safer. We didn't even need to use Metallica, right? So everyone here, it just goes to show that they have to say something. They have to have that clickbait. They can't simply say, thank you, President Trump, for hauling in the dictator that deserves to be in the defendant chair, that deserves to answer for millions of people whose lives have been ruined and hundreds of thousands of people who have died under his impervious watch. But unfortunately, they just want that dopamine hit. They want the followers, rather than constituents, to applaud them.
Congress has every right to expect to be made aware of a military attack on land, and they should have the right to be consulted. We have a history in recent years where at least the Gang of Eight, the heads of the Intelligence Committee and the leaders in both the House and the Senate, there's a trust that the president, regardless of any party. I don't know about the young lady, the woman you were talking about, what may have motivated her to say what she said. But this is why I think it's incumbent upon the president to come before the country. I think the country wants to understand, which I think we all understand, we got a narco-terrorist and we've arrested him, and that was the right thing to do. I think the confusion comes as people are trying to digest, what does this mean for military action in Venezuela? Should we expect another? The president, I think, flippantly and in his own way said that the vice president, who is now the president, she should expect worse if she does not follow what we're saying. I think the confusion for a lot of people, Emily, and those around the table, is when President Trump, in the press conference at Mar-a-Lago, which I watched very closely and watched Secretary Rubio very closely, when he was asked what's going to happen in Venezuela now, and he said, we're going to run the country. I think that's what really provoked and catalyzed a lot of this reaction. I think the Democrats will react in the way some are. You're right, Jesse and Dana, there's an inconsistency in what, and Greg, you pointed out something that Senator Murphy said. There's an inconsistency there that you have to fess up to. But if you're the president, you have to give a message to the country, explain what we did, explain why we did it, what running the country means. And I've seen some people in the administration talk about this term FAFO, which I think they really mean mess around and find out. That can't be a governing military doctrine. You said it well, Greg, just a few seconds ago. It almost feels like we're winging some of it. We didn't wing the military part of it. Jay Clayton is not winging the exercise of the legal instruments that he's using, as Emily said, but it doesn't sound like we know fully why we're there, what we're trying to accomplish, and frankly, what the Dunroe doctrine actually is.
He did invoke my name. I didn't say anybody winging anything.
You used the word winging, not about him.
He was winging it.
I said I was winging it,
And I just
Harold.
used it to
How
say somebody
dare
else.
you? By the way, you did mention one thing about like running this before Congress. There is no trust. It would have been leaked immediately, and those people would have died.
I disagree with you.
Oh no, we know it. You had Democrats basically telling the military to disobey orders. There's no way after that Trump is going to tell anybody anything. In terms of saying run the country, he's basically saying we're cutting up their credit cards for now. That's all it is.
There's been no example of anybody leaking anything under President Trump, and I hate to say this, but the only time anyone is talking about military,
Harold, they weaponized the intelligence.
That's not fair. That's not fair. That's not fair. The only leaking was by the president's own team on a tweet site. they
You're
had.
wrong. I'm right. Happy New Year.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.